Please be seated. There was a time in my life when I would have been happy for the high of the day to be 40 degrees. Now, when the low is 40, it's a little difficult. I see some of you bundled up as well. Moving around a lot as a child, it was rather discombobulating to move sometimes after 10 or 12 months, often after 12 months. Having gotten established in a school and established with friends and those sorts of things. I began to recently to think back on how it is that actually it worked out pretty well for me. Why, after a certain point, I began to make those transitions pretty well. It was difficult in terms of school because school was, and I never knew what was going to happen with that. But I've come to believe that there were a couple of things that really helped me to develop and work well for me. One was that there was consistency of things that would happen from place to place. There was a routine that we had in our family. That routine included we sat down for dinner at the same time every day. I had the same bedtime until I was way too old to have it. But that was consistent. There were those sorts of things that were very helpful for me in making those transitions. They brought me comfort. They gave me strength. They helped me to get through the more difficult aspects of the transitions. But there was another thing. As crazy as it was to go from one school to another or from one neighborhood to another, when we moved from the church or churches to the next group of churches or churches, our church where my father would be pastor, I always had a sense that I belonged. That I belonged. It may be a different structure. It may be the service was a little different, although since he was in charge of that, he kept them pretty much the same. But knowing that I belonged somewhere was an incredibly important and stabilizing thing for me in my life. Little did I know that in a few years I would learn that a man named Maslow had come up with this concept of hierarchy of needs. He did this in the 30s and 40s and 50s, where he said that our emotional and psychic development takes place as we have basic needs met. There's a pyramid, and there are 5 different stages, 5 different needs that we have to have met in order to get to the next one. And the ultimate being that we become who we're supposed to be. The first is that we have our physical needs met. We're not hungry. We have shelter. We have those kinds of structures that we need. And if we have the basics of those met, then we can attend to the next level of needs, which are needs related to safety. Do I have the protection that I need? Do I have those kinds of things that I need in order to be able to develop the ways I need to? And then right smack in the middle, the third of the 5 levels of need is belonging. Belonging. Now, you can debate how valid Maslow's theory is, But what I'm here to tell you is that it offers a framework for me to understand some important things about myself. Obviously, if I'm hungry, it's hard to feel safe, and if I'm fed but I live in fear, it's hard for me to move on to learning about belonging. But I had my food, I had shelter, I had people who kept me safe. And so belonging became very important for me. I think it's important for all of us. I think we all look for a place to belong. We look for friends. We look for work colleagues. We look for social groups. We look for professional groups, places where we belong. And I think it's important in our emotional and psychic development. Our gospel reading today broadens our understanding of it a bit. Jesus is coming up to where John is baptizing his disciples. Understand, there is no Christian church at this time. John is baptizing his disciples, the ones who are going to follow him. And Jesus comes walking up, and he looks at John, and he says, "Baptize me." Well, we don't know that John even recognized Jesus. We don't know they were related. There's no evidence they ever saw each other or knew each other. There's no evidence that they didn't. But John looks at him and seems to know who he is through some means. And he says, "Oh, no, wait a minute. I should be the one being baptized by you." And Jesus says, "Oh, no, this is how it has to happen, so do it." So John did it. He baptized Jesus in the Jordan. And as he came up out of the water, this voice booms out. At least I think it booms out. James Earl Jones kind of booming out. And says, "He belongs. This is my son. He belongs to me. And I am well pleased." And in the midst of it, he uses that word, beloved. Beloved. He belongs. You see, we can talk about all sorts of theological issues related to baptism. We can talk about what it does and doesn't do, and we can debate it all day and all night. But at its very basic level, baptism is our being claimed by God. We belong. We belong. And so what Matthew is saying to us, as much as belonging is important for your emotional development or your psychic development, it is important in your spiritual development and in your faith development. It is important that we belong. When you and I come up out of the waters of baptism or have them poured over our head or sprinkled or whatever happens, that is God saying to us, you belong. And you belong not just to me, you belong in me. You are a part of the body of Christ. Wow. Wow. I mean, think about it. Every now and then you and I will get on our high horse and we'll get upset about something at church or in the world or with a friend or something, and we'll say, I can do it on my own. I'll go read my Bible. I can grow, and I can love and be part of the faith and not have anything to do with anybody else. No, we belong. And if we don't belong, you and I lose something very important in our lives. And if you and I don't belong, the body of Christ ceases to be. And that's tragic for us. But you know what else? It's tragic for the world. It's tragic for the world. Because who else can teach the world what it's like to belong but you and me? So this day we celebrate the baptism of Jesus. I invite you and me to live into our baptism. Take a little time and look at the vows that are in the prayer book for baptism. They're very informative. But live into belonging. Live into what it means to belong, to be in the body of Christ. Live into what it means to belong to each other. And live into what it means to belong as we are in the world. Because we belong.